Assalamu alaikum. I was just passing by checking my videos on TikTok when I came across this particular video, which the Christians have said that the Muslims cannot give answers to this. And with this, I would like to touch on it. Is there any question that the Muslims do not have answers to it when you have the Quran? Now, let's examine the verse. Mark chapter number 14, verse number 60 to 61 downwards. Let's enjoy the show. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Facebook and also on TikTok, inshallah. UTI Dawah is the name.
Right,
Mark chapter 14.
Right, 14.
Verse 61. Okay, so this is not John. This
Right,
is
14,
Mark.
14,
Okay,
61.
Let me
Right,
read it.
14.
Let me read it again.
1461, hold on.
So according to this pastor, he just quoted Mark chapter number 14, verse number 61. Let's start from context and then get the whole picture, inshallah. When you read Mark chapter number 14, verse number 53 downwards, we will get the whole show. It says, they took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the teachers of the law came together. Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death, but they did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statement did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, I will destroy this temple with human hands, and in 3 days will build another, not made with hands. Yet even then their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, are you not going to answer? Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again, the high priest asked, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? So the high priest only asked, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? Verse 62 says, I am, said Jesus. And are you the Son of Man, sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and on the clouds of heaven? The high priest tore his clothes. Why do we need any more witness? So you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? So this is it. This is the aspect. Now let's look at the contradictory side of it. This can never be an evidence to make Jesus God at all. Let's look at the contradiction side of it. Before. Now, Jesus before the Pilate. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Go back to Mark 14. Mark 14. They ask him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? In Matthew chapter number 27, verse number 11, it says, meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked, are you the king of the Jews? Which is which? Which question did the governor ask him? So the evidence you are even bringing is still false due to its contradiction aspect of it. You understand? Now, you have heard, you have said so. Jesus replied. Now let's go to John chapter number 18, verse number 20 to 23, so that you see another show. But before then, let me explain Mark 14 first. They ask him, again, the high priest asked him, are you the Messiah? Messiah means someone who is anointed. It's come from the Greek word Christos, Messiah, from the Hebrew Mashiach, to anoint someone. So it doesn't mean he is God, the Son of the Blessed One. I am, said Jesus. Now Jesus has said he's Son of God. You are even Son of God. John 20 verse 17. Matthew 6 verse number 9. Our Father who art in heaven. Matthew 23 verse number 9. We have one Father in heaven. John 20 verse 17. Do not touch me. I have not yet ascended to my Father, your Father, my God, and your God. Exodus 4:22. Israel is the first son of God. Jeremiah 31 verse 9. Ephraim is the first son of God. Luke 3 verse number 38. Adam is the son of God. Psalm 2 verse number 1 to 7. David is the son of God. 2 Samuel 7 verse number 14. Solomon is the son of God. Psalm 89 verse number 27. Solomon is also a son of God mentioned over there. And there are a lot of sons of God in your Bible. Even Matthew 5 verse 9. All peacemakers are sons of God. So when he says yes, he's his father. In other words, he's saying he is a servant of God. In Act 3 verse 13, Christ is called servant of God. Over there, Act 4:27, servant of God over there. In Matthew 12 verse 17 to 20, he said, I am the servant of God whom Isaiah prophesied about. So Son of God is a metaphoric way of saying servant of God. Then we continue. I am, said Jesus, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One. So is he God, or he is sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One? He did not even address himself as Mighty One. He said, you will see him sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. So meaning he is not even God. He's sitting at the right hand of God. So even the caption they brought, that Jesus Christ alayhi salam is God, doesn't even tally with Mark 14 verse number 62. You understand? Let's continue. No, if you read it in context, the Jews never found fault at him. On the contrary, they had this intention to twist his message and make sure they are putting him to fault. You understand? What he said was not wrong at all. I have explained right now. So if I hate you, if you say good, I'll turn it into bad. You understand? If you say good, I'll make it God. For how long has Jesus said in John 18 verse 36 that his disciples did not fight for him? For how long has he said in John 8 verse 29 that he was sent by God? John 8:42, he was sent by God. John 5 verse 30, sent by God. John 5 verse 32, sent by God. John 5 verse 37, sent by God. Luke 11 verse 20, sent by God. Matthew 12 verse 28, sent by God. Mark 12 verse number 28 to 29, sent by God. Mark 10 verse 17 to 18, sent by God. How many times should we be proving you with these verses? John 17 verse number 3, John 14 verse 24, John 14 verse 26, John 14 verse 28, John 10 verse number 29. For how long should we continue giving you these verses each and every day? And moreover, if Christ is called Son of God, or if Christ is called Son of Man, then it does not make him God, because in Psalm 146 verse number 34 says we shouldn't put our trust in the princes of God or in the Son of Man. You understand? Christ was called Son of Man for 81 times. And it's not the only one that is called Son of Man. It is a title. Even Ezekiel was called Son of Man numerous number of times than Jesus. You understand? So this is petty things in the Bible that you and I have to study. Let's continue.
But he kept silent and did not answer. Again, the high priest was questioning him and saying to him, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus said, "I am. And you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Tearing his clothes, the high priest said, "What further need do we have of witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. How does it seem to you?" And they all condemned him to be deserving of death. Now, the citation in verse 62 is from the book of Daniel.
And when the pastor was saying that Mark 14, verse number 62, where it's saying that, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven, the pastor just made a reference to Daniel 7, trying to say he has fulfilled it. He never fulfilled it. That prophecy has not come to pass. Even Mark 62 is saying they will see him coming. It's a prophecy. It has not yet fulfilled, and so therefore it is not an evidence yet. Had it been fulfilled, you have a case to talk about. You understand? It has not yet been fulfilled, so you have no case to prove yet. Even if we are to make a case study of Mark 14 verse number 53 down against John chapter number 18, there are a lot of contradictions in there. For example, let's see, was Peter quiet or Peter was talking? In Mark 14 verse 53, they took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the teachers of the law came together. Peter followed him at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. Over here, he wasn't talking. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death, but they did not find any. So over here, Peter was quiet. Nobody asked Peter any question. You understand? Now let's look at John chapter number 18, verse number 17. Let's look at that plus. Let's start from verse 15. It says, Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. In Mark 14, it was only Peter who followed him. But when you come to John chapter number 18, it was Simon Peter and another disciple. So you can see the contradiction. Because his disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. But Peter had to wait outside at the door. Over here, Peter was waiting outside at the door. In Mark 14, Peter followed him at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest. He went to the courtyard of the high priest. He was there. but he was standing afar. Over in John 18, he was standing outside the door. He wasn't in the courtyard. But Peter had to wait outside the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the servant girl on the duty there, and brought in Peter. So the first story of Mark, Peter did not just enter. Peter just entered straightforward to the courtroom. But with the case of John 18 verse 16, the security guard had to bring in Peter inside. Note this. Verse 17, it says, "You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?" She asked Peter. He replied, "I am not." So over here in John 18, Peter was questioned and Peter had to bring answers. But in Mark 14, nobody asked Peter any question. In fact, nobody had to hold Peter's hand and take him inside. Which kind of books are we reading today? Which kind of books? Christians, must you always try your best to lie? Verse 18, "It was cold, and a servant and officials stood around a fire they had made to keep warm. Peter also was standing with them, warming himself." So in Mark 14, he was at the fire warming himself, but quiet, nobody questioned him. In John 18, he received a lot of questions. Verse 19, "Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teachings. I have spoken openly." Now, over here, the question that they questioned Jesus was about his disciples and his teachings. But in Matthew chapter number 27, it says, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Are you the king of the Jews? In Mark chapter number 14, verse number 61, it says, again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" They never questioned him about any disciple. But in John 18, they were questioning him with regards to his disciples. In John 18, meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teachings. Two different things. So who is telling us the truth? And these things are supposed to be inspired by the Holy Spirit of God. "I have spoken openly to the world," Jesus replied. "I always taught in synagogues or at the temple, where all the Jews came together. I said nothing in secret." So over here, Christ wasn't quiet. "Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said." So Christ gave answer. But when we read Mark chapter number 14, verse 61, it says, "But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer." Which is which? Which is which? In Mark 14, verse 61, he gave no answer. In John 18, in John chapter number 18, verse number 20, "I have spoken openly to the world," Jesus replied. So he gave an answer. Who is telling us the truth? "I always taught in synagogues or at the temple, where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said." So when Jesus had said this, one of the officials nearby slapped him in the face. "Is this the way you answer the high priest?" he demanded. And he did not still keep quiet. "If I said something wrong," Jesus replied, "testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why do you strike me?" Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. So there is nothing that is being common over here, full of contradiction. Which one should we accept?
About the Son of Man who appears before the Ancient of Days. And the Son of Man in the book of Daniel is given worship. Jesus applied these words to himself. The Jews understood him to be claiming deity. They tore his clothes and said, "Why do we have further need of witnesses? He's blasphemed." This isn't John. This is Mark. So, can you tell me how you understand that these words could be uttered by Jesus?
But there is one interesting answer to that Christ gave over here. One interesting answer. When you read John 18, verse number 20, when he was questioned about his disciple and his teachings, he said, "I have spoken openly to the world." Jesus replied, "I always taught in synagogues or at the temple, where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me?" This was his second answer. The first one, he remained silent, but then he went further to explain. But then when you read Mark 14, verse number 62. Guess the answer. Christ said, they ask him, again, the high priest asked him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds. These answers do not tally. So which question was he asked and which answers did he give? Spare us these stories. Spare us these stories.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zana Company Limited, wo. In fact, uwe goodie, uwe copper, uwe silver, uwe gold, au pese winsiesi no, when electroplating, woni baby ako, against Zana Company Limited, uwe goodie, au pese wonda nesene ope, onye the silver chain, onye the golden chain, onye the golden ring. Then o person wonye no Zana BCC no edi amount. In fact, one organizes sports, open cup, and open medals be that to omukomu. Zana Company Limited bet to me edi amount. Any kind of jewelry at all. Zana Company and a young wejuma. Zana ewa himfa. Here Zana ewa nungwa behind Fidelity Bank. Raviko ewo and a Zana ewo. Number 7 friends Zana 0240 481 568 0240 481 568 and 0248 42 44 93 0248 42 44 93. We are Henny, we are Busia Penny, we are Goody, we are Catesia, we are Boga, we are Golden Chain, or a wrist banner, or then one, a gold, copper, silver, a jewel in Quadia. Kwayo pesa yensiese no famo biara no yebetumi aye ediamao enti contact Zana Company Limited na omamwa inshallah enwe nyina be wo so
Annabi Muhammad Sayyidun Annabi Muhammad Adin Annabi Muhammad Muhudin Annabi Muhammad Muqaddamu Annabi Muhammad Azizun Annabi Muhammad Fadilun Annabi Muhammad Mufaddilun Annabi Muhammad Muhammad Annabi Muhammad Muhammad Annabi Rasulallah Annabi